On Yemen's Red Sea coast, a stricken supertanker carrying 1 million barrels of crude oil is at risk of causing an environmental disaster. Unable to raise the full $80 million to remove the oil, the United Nations has resorted to crowdfunding to raise the shortfall. David Gressly is the United Nations humanitarian co-ordinator for Yemen. David, welcome. What might happen if this cargo of oil is not removed from the ship?
Well, as you say, it's over 1 million barrels of oil. It will pollute not only the immediate areas on the Yemeni coast, but could affect any of the countries in the Red Sea area. We estimate up to 200,000 fishermen would be affected, potentially destroying fishing grounds for 25 years. It would have an impact on shipping lanes. Vessels can't move through an oil spill slick. And as you know, the Red Sea gets very narrow at that point. So it could affect that. It could affect tourism. It would destroy pristine environments, some of the most beautiful on the planet. It would make difficult humanitarian assistance and commercial food coming into the port of Hodeida. It would cost $20 billion just to clean up, not counting the actual impact. And it's also not a question of if, it's a question of when. This is a vessel that's falling apart for the last 7 years. It will fall apart. The only question is whether we will be able to respond in time to stop the oil from polluting the Red Sea.
Has the United Nations ever had to resort to crowdfunding before to tackle an environmental disaster, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, not for an environmental disaster. There have been other ways of raising funding from the public, perhaps not at this scale, though, and certainly not with this urgency. So I think in that sense, it's quite unique. We do need to raise about $20 million more so we can do this emergency operation. We need to do it as quickly as we can. We've had technical experts on the ground who've told us that time is running out. We really do need to act or this thing will spill out.
And David, great news that concerned citizens around the world are being called to arms. But I must ask you, I mean, the ship must have an owner. The oil cargo must have had an owner. What about their corporate and social responsibility? Why don't they pay out?
Well, the vessel itself is owned by the government of Yemen. And of course, they're in the midst of a civil war at this point in time. That's why this whole issue is complex and difficult. It's not because it's technically difficult to remove the oil. It's because of the political and security problems related to the civil war. So the ownership of the vessel is quite clear, and the government of Yemen itself has given us the go-ahead for this, so we're not worried about that part. But they don't have resources. So we have to go outside of Yemen to get the resources for it. And it should not be seen as a Yemen-only problem. It's a regional and potentially global problem particularly when it comes to international shipping. So we all should be chipping in on this. And the ownership, we're not worried about it because we're not removing the oil. We're just putting it into another vessel so that it's secure and does not pose an environmental threat. Ownership issues can be resolved later.
Crowdfunding has been used, as we've reported on this program, to fund weapons for Ukraine, cancer treatment in the United States. Do you think we're seeing a democratization of political action around the world where citizens put their money where their mouth is rather than wait for lumbering, slow government and international organizations to move?
Well, I will say this. I think a number of member states did act quickly, but also I think it is great that we give the chance for the public to also contribute. They, too, have a voice in our global environment, and this is a chance for them to exercise that through a contribution. So this is, I think, very appropriate that we have a combination of public outreach for support, member state support, private sector support. That kind of partnership and coalition to solve global problems, I think, is a very good way for the future.
David Gressly from the United Nations, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.